Imagine you need to meet the single most powerful man in an entire empire. But guards are watching every door, and if they recognize your face, you could lose your life before you even reach him. So what do? You climb inside a large, rolled-up carpet, and you let complete strangers carry you in, as if you were nothing more than a package.
Wait, an actual carpet. Are you telling me a real person once hid inside a rolled-up carpet just to reach someone?
A real person and a true story. And that single, strange meeting turned her into one of the most powerful rulers in all of history. By the end of today's story, you will understand exactly how. I'm Alice.
And I'm Leo.
And this is English Decoding, the place where we don't just learn English words, we decode true stories and the surprising facts hidden inside them. So let me tell you about this remarkable woman.
Please go on because I already want to know everything about her. Who was she?
Her name was Cleopatra, and here is the first surprise. Most people assume she was Egyptian, but she actually wasn't.
Wait, she wasn't Egyptian, but she was the queen of Egypt. How is that even possible?
Her family originally came from Greece, part of a ruling family called a dynasty, which began with one of Alexander the Great's own generals, hundreds of years before Cleopatra was even born.
A dynasty. So that means one single family that keeps ruling a country generation after generation.
Exactly right. Cleopatra's family had ruled Egypt as outsiders for nearly 300 years without ever truly becoming part of Egyptian culture. And that brings us to the second surprise.
Okay, I need to hear this one too.
Many people believe Cleopatra's power came from her incredible beauty. But historians who study old coins from her time say her face was actually fairly ordinary, even somewhat rough by the standards of that era.
Wait, so she wasn't even famous for being beautiful. That is completely different from the story I always heard growing up.
It's different from what most people hear, yes. An ancient writer named Plutarch even said her beauty was not truly incomparable. He said it was her voice and her charm that people found impossible to resist. Her real power came from somewhere else entirely.
Now I'm genuinely curious. Where exactly did her real power come from then?
From her mind, Cleopatra was fluent in nearly a dozen languages.
Fluent. That means she could speak that many languages perfectly, without any real difficulty.
Exactly, and here is what makes this remarkable. In 300 years, not one ruler in her entire family had ever bothered to learn Egyptian. Not one in 3 centuries. Cleopatra was the only one who did.
Wait, so for 300 years, the rulers of Egypt couldn't even speak to their own people in their own language.
They genuinely couldn't. But Cleopatra learned Egyptian, and she spoke to her own people directly, something none of her ancestors had ever cared enough to do.
That's honestly incredible. So in some strange way, she became more Egyptian than her own family, even though she wasn't Egyptian by blood at all.
Perfectly said, Leo. And that same intelligence is exactly what led her to that carpet, and to the meeting that changed absolutely everything.
Okay, now please tell me, why on earth did she have to hide inside a carpet in the first place?
When Cleopatra's father died, she was still very young. She began ruling Egypt with her younger brother, since that was simply the tradition in her family. But the arrangement did not last very long.
Let me guess what happened next. Her brother decided he wanted all the power for himself.
Exactly that. His advisors eventually pushed her out of the palace completely, and Cleopatra was forced into exile.
Exile, that means she was forced to leave her own country and couldn't simply go back home whenever she wanted.
Precisely right. She lost her palace, her throne, and her home almost all at once. But Cleopatra refused to accept defeat. She gathered soldiers near the border, quietly preparing to take her throne back by force.
Okay, so she's already planning her comeback. Honestly, I like her more with every part of this story.
At exactly this moment, one of the most powerful men in the entire world arrived in Egypt. His name was Julius Caesar, the leader of Rome, and he had come to help settle the conflict between Cleopatra and her brother.
So she just needed to walk in and introduce herself properly, right?
If only it were really that simple. Her brother controlled the palace completely, and his guards were watching every single entrance. If they had seen Cleopatra trying to enter, she would very likely have been killed right there, on the spot.
Okay, so this is finally where the carpet comes into the story.
This is exactly where the carpet comes in. Cleopatra had herself wrapped inside a large, rolled-up carpet and asked one loyal servant to carry it directly into Caesar's private quarters, as if it were nothing more than an ordinary gift.
I still cannot imagine doing that myself. Lying completely still inside a rolled-up carpet, just hoping nobody notices you breathing.
And when the carpet was finally unrolled, right in front of Caesar himself, out stepped the Queen of Egypt, dressed in her full royal clothing, completely unharmed.
That might genuinely be one of the most dramatic entrances I have ever heard about.
Caesar was equally amazed. He was captivated by her intelligence and boldness, and agreed almost immediately to help her take back her throne. And just like that, the young queen who had lost everything was queen once again.
So it was really her mind, and honestly her courage, that brought her all the way back from complete disaster.
It was, and Cleopatra would need that exact same courage again, sooner than she probably expected.
What happened to her next?
A few years later, Caesar was killed by his own political enemies, back in Rome. Cleopatra suddenly lost her strongest ally in a world that had just become far more dangerous for her.
Ally, I believe that means someone who supports you and fights on your side when things get difficult.
Exactly right. So she formed a new alliance, this time with a Roman general named Mark Antony, mainly to keep protecting Egypt from being swallowed whole by Rome.
I think I've actually heard this particular part of the story somewhere before, mostly as a great romance.
Many people have, but underneath all of that romance, the real truth is simpler. Just like before, this alliance was pure strategy, dressed up as love.
So even here, it still comes back to strategy and not just emotion.
Exactly. Cleopatra spent almost her entire life making difficult, brilliant decisions, all to protect her throne and her people.
So did all of that careful strategy finally work out for her?
For many years, it truly did. But eventually, a young Roman leader named Octavian rose to power, and he saw Cleopatra and Antony as a direct threat to his own ambitions. A war broke out between them, and this time, Cleopatra and Antony lost.
Oh no, that really doesn't sound good at all. What happened to her after that?
According to the most famous legend, when Cleopatra realized all was truly lost, she chose to end her own life, rather than be captured and paraded through Rome as a prisoner. The old story claims she allowed a poisonous snake to bite her.
Wait, is that part actually true, or is that mostly just a popular legend?
A genuinely sharp question, Leo. Many historians today doubt this exact detail and believe she likely used a different kind of poison entirely. But what remains certain is that Cleopatra chose her own ending, right until her very last moment.
So even in death, she was still somehow the one making the final decision.
Exactly right. And with her death, nearly 3,000 years of Egyptian independence finally came to an end. Egypt became just another territory of Rome.
That's such a heavy, difficult way for a story like this one to end.
It is heavy, yes, but it honestly isn't the true end of her story. Because more than 2,000 years later, we are still talking about her, right now, in this very episode.
That's actually true. So what do you personally think people should remember her for?
Not her crown, not the legendary beauty that turns out to have been mostly a myth. People should remember her mind, her many languages, and her refusal to accept defeat again and again. That is her real legacy.
Legacy. I think that means what a person leaves behind them long after they are gone.
Exactly right. And Cleopatra's legacy teaches us this. Real power rarely comes from how a person looks. It comes from their mind, their courage, and their ability to keep fighting, even when everything seems completely lost.
Honestly, I think a lot of people underestimate exactly what they are truly capable of doing.
Most of us do, Leo, more often than we probably realize. So if today's story taught you something new, hit that subscribe button so the next story finds you and you become one of the very first decoders in this community.
We have more true stories, just like this one, coming very soon.
We do, so tell us in the comments in English, what is one thing about yourself that people usually underestimate? I'm Alice.
And I'm Leo.
See you next time.